Hello and welcome to my channel. I hope you're having a nice day. This video is intended to be the start to a series that I would like to try doing on a craft with me tutorial process video kind of thing. And we'll just see how it goes. I've been asked many times to share how I do my journals and so forth. And I know there are a lot of videos out there, and there's no right or no wrong way, but I have learned so much from this community that I would really like to be able to give something back. So it is my pleasure to do this for anyone who is interested out there. And I do thank you for watching. This first video, I'm imagining, will be a lot of discussion and talking and sharing a lot of tips and tricks that I've learned along the way, and I hope they will be helpful to you. I have been junk journaling for almost 3 years. This is August right now, and in October it will be 3 years. What I did before that was a lot of scrapbooking for probably 25 years. Always been a scrapbooker actually since I was a kid, but formal archival quality scrapbooking about 25 years ago. And so I have a lot of experience with paper crafting. I've done a lot of workshops, taken them, and gone to a lot of classes and online tutorials and stuff like that. The way that I learned in the beginning about junk journaling was definitely from YouTube, video after video after video, just going down the rabbit hole. And I believe it started when I was searching out beautiful albums, just hand making your own album. So I would start with chipboard and then wrap it in book cloth and do all the layering up with either paper or fabrics. And I just was enjoying learning new things and taking on the challenge. And then I don't know if I was searching out graphic 45 or what I was doing, and I found people were doing journals, but they were really cool and they were actually beautiful, and they were anything but junk. Some were junky in the term of using whatever you have at home, being resourceful and creative and making something beautiful out of it. And I'm all about that. That's fantastic. So I was appealed more by the really vintage looking ones, and a lot of these flip outs and hidey holes and pockets and lace and buttons and silk and embellishments, and it was like wackadoodle. Something inside me came alive, as all of you can relate, and the button was on fast forward. So I tried my hand at it. The first junk journal that I made, I ended up trying every trick that I had learned and trying a pretty difficult cover using Tyvek and fabric bonding and all that kind of stuff with the iron. And I made the cover first because that's what the person that I was watching suggested. So I did that. However, as you know, my journal ended up being so full that it did not fit that cover. There was no way. And after doing all those pages and signatures, I was not gonna hone it down and stuff it and try and make it fit in that one little cover that I had completed. So I made another cover. Still wasn't big enough. Third cover was the charm, and I was very pleased with it. I still kept those other two covers as kind of a learning curve thing. I won't throw them away. I could use them for something in the future. And it ended up being a gift for my friend. And it was a shabby chic pink and kind of multicolored type thing. And what I learned, the most valuable lesson was you make the signatures first and then you do the cover based on the thickness of the signatures and the number of pages and the volume of embellishments and lace and such that you want to put inside. That's what works for me. I admire people who make a cover and then just are very disciplined to keep the signature to fit into that cover, that's great. But I would rather do it the other way around. And I experimented with several different products, and my favorite by far is Craftex. You can paint it, you can use it wet or dry, you can sew right through it like butter. It's sturdy and yet it's still flexible and lightweight enough to not be as weighty as a hardcover book. I would like to try doing a hardcover book and then sew my signatures into something that is glued inside the original spine area. That's something I have never tried. I always love to take on a challenge and do different themes and different styles. That's fabulous, but it kind of always comes out with my little spin on it, as most of you probably are very familiar with yourself when that happens. Anyhow, that's just giving you a little overview of where I'm coming from. So right now when I look on my shelf, I have kept for myself about 45 journals, which is about 40 too many, but I'm not willing to part with them. Until this point, I have made journals as either gifts for friends or family, and just took on my first custom order. Actually, I took on two, but one was for a friend, and she supplied me with a lot of her own vintage supplies and materials. And so it's been a positive experience for me. It's something that I'm willing to explore. But what my friends suggested to me was, well, if you find it hard to part with them, why don't you just make two? Keep one, sell one. And I thought, okay, maybe that's something I could try. So that is my intention here. And what I've chosen to do is a ballet themed journal, and I'm making two. So what I'm gonna go over today is basically how to place your papers, how to determine how many to use, and the sizes, and then what kind of prep work you do to build your journal. So this one is going to be mostly vintage and pink, but I am really kind of leaning towards bringing black in here because I think black and pink for ballet is stunning. So that's probably what you're going to see evolving. And what I do is I laser print my papers first, and then I tea dye them. That's what works for me. They don't run. I prefer to hand dip each page and let it just air dry. No ironing ever. And they lie completely flat, no bumps and buckles. And that's what I prefer to do. That's my choice. You can coffee dye papers, you can avocado dye, you can Kool-Aid dye, you can eco dye. You can just leave them with a white background. Totally up to you. And you don't even have to use digitals. You can use scrapbook paper and tea dye it or not. It's just such an open craft that you can do whatever you want with. You can really heavily embellish your pages. You can leave them quite bare if you like. Every one of those are totally fine. So what I usually do is decide if it's going to be 2 or 3 signatures. I've done a few that are 1. Those are easy peasy. And if you've never done a junk journal, I would definitely start with doing 1 signature, which is like a chapter, and 8 to 10 pages, and then make sure that you're happy with it, and then try the next one with a 2 signature, 3 signature, whatever. It's a lot to take on to try and do 2 or 3 full signatures on your first couple of journals. So what I've done here in my selection is printed some of the pages at different heights, or that's just the way that the suggested guidelines were when I purchased the kits. I like that staggered effect, and I actually would like to do a little bit more, so I might put in a few more flaps. We'll see. Something that you might want to consider is not just folding them in half, but folding them like, say, 1/4 and 3/4, so you're going to get different looks on the edge of the page. And I'm going to show you an example here in this other journal where this one is long, and then what I've done is folded it over and just run a vintage seam binding through there. And then on this side it's about the same as the rest of the journal. So that's an example of what you can do. And if you're hesitant to embellish pages, you know, you can start with just leaving them really, really blank. And this one here is a folio with a journal inside it. So what I've done here is used tea-dyed papers, digital images. This is more of a travel notebook size, and just left a lot of the pages what I would call not bare, but simple. And so easy for writing, easy to put this whole thing in your purse and just go with it. So that would be just a different style of journal. Something like that, a traveler's notebook would be an easy one to start with too, if you've never made a journal. Something that I've done over the years is, well, I'm pretty picky and a perfectionist, which this whole junk journaling craft has really helped me to try and get away from that, being so fussy. But I do have a lot of supplies, as you can imagine. I've accumulated a lot over the years. So I have made myself a couple of binders, and what I do is I've got just an inventory of my different dies. So I've got the measurements on there, and I've got several of these books. But just to give you an idea of, these are quick guides, references. So if I'm doing a page and I'm thinking, I kind of want some flowers or a tag or a border punch, some words, I've got that all at my fingertips, and then I go right for the die, and there's no messing around, because it gets messy on its own, as you can imagine. And then another thing that I use a lot of is stamping. So I just have this folder, and what I've done is by theme or by stamp set is just stamp out different ones, write the name of the manufacturer or the supplier, and then I can always look at these at a glance. I mean, maybe you don't feel you need that, but that helps me immensely, and I can go right for the stamp that I want and use it, and sometimes ink colors too. Like for this particular ballet journal, I'm gonna go with Victorian Velvet. I was considering Tattered Rose, but I think it's a little too brown of an ink. So that's what I'm going to do to distress all my edges. So these are kind of starting tips that I have found extremely helpful. Just throwing that out there. If you're a really organized person, that might help you. If you don't have very many dies or stamps, that's fine. And you've got, you're under control, and you've got your selections at hand, and that's what you go with. If I know what kind of a theme I've got coming up that I would like to try, but I don't have any supplies for that particular theme, which I didn't have anything ballet, I started to collect little charms. I collected a few stamps off eBay, and some laces, particular colors. Also, these beautiful Prima die cuts. They're acetate, I guess they are. And they're just gorgeous. So I did get the 2 sizes of scrapbooking paper to complement my digital images. This one is by Stamperia. It's called Passion. So it's got all the same color tones and complements really nicely. This is also something that I would plan ahead and order so that I have it on hand. I always get an 8x8 and a 12x12 so that I've got double the images. With Stamperia, you only get 10 sheets of paper per paper pack, so you don't want to make any miscuts. These are these acetate die cuts. I don't know if you can see them very well, but you'll see them as I go along, and do the various stages of constructing this journal. Another thing that I would have in mind would be, let's say, pieces that I want to use for tags. So I've gone through my scrapbook paper and picked out some different colors. These are just 6.5 inch. So I would cut this in half, and then I would, you know, change the shape of the top of the tag or journaling card, excuse me. And so those are a lot of things you can do ahead of time to just accumulate the different items that you think would be a possibility to include in your journal. I've got these vintage buttons because I'm making 2 journals, 2 signatures. I need 5 per signature, that's 20. And so I had ordered 30 of this color. That's just another thing. Oh yeah, coming back to the charms, I got a package of these on Amazon. You can get them for like $7.99 for 60 of them, which is a great deal. I usually like the antique brass, but they don't always have them in what I like. Get your washi tape ready. Your glue. These are my favorites. Fabri-Tac for anything that you're going to attach to fabric. And of course, art glitter glue. And I buy the big size and just keep refilling. I've got about 2 or 3 of these little bottles. They're getting pretty roughed up looking. And then we would go to embellishing. And I have pulled out a lot of laces and things. And that's probably what I'm going to work on today, just to start out once I show you what I'm thinking of doing. As far as pages go, I've got some vintage laces in these beautiful ballet pink rose color. And then some fancy ones too. Doesn't mean that I'm going to use them all. Because this is a color that I use repeatedly, I do have a good collection. And I just bought a whole slew. Bought a bunch off a lady on Etsy. And then I always think about, am I gonna want there to be anything cascading off the sides or the bottom of the journal? And for this one, I've decided I want to do the sides. So that means I'm probably going to have a lot of 8-inch long pieces. And what I usually do is cut about 5, 6, 7 for each signature. And then I cut them all the same length, 8 1/4 inches. And that way I can use them on any size page. And if I have kind of overcut them, so be it. I'll use it for a tag or something. But it's easier for me to plan out each page or each signature, how many lace edges I want to do. And then the same with pockets. So I pulled a few of these vintage laces that I'm thinking of doing for pockets. This is not a good cut, but this is one of the fabrics that I would like. This is from a curtain. And this beautiful, not really a doily, but I guess a placemat or something. I started cutting it last night, and then I thought, oh, I should probably just do that on camera. So I did. When you look at buying anything vintage, I look at how many can I get out of it and which direction is it gonna go, other than a great big piece like a curtain or a tablecloth or something like that. So I measured these and they're just over 8 inches. So that's what I will have, and I'll probably do it like so on the edge of the page. Actually, probably like this, so that it drapes over just a little bit. And so that's for sure. I don't want to change that pattern, although you could. If I decided to make a pocket out of it, like a horizontal pocket rather than vertical, then I would cut it right here, if you can see that line, and right there. But for now, I'm just going to cut it in 3. And this is just a leftover pocket that I had from another project, so I would like to use that in this one. And I know a lot of people comment on how they don't want to cut their vintage lace, and I get that. But I'm pretty ruthless at it already, so what I would do is, I can see right now it's got this line here, and that's where I'm going to make my cut. So with this one piece of, I don't know what you want to call it, placemat or whatever, I can do 3 beautiful pockets. Look at that embroidery on there. Isn't that stunning? So delicate. All right, so before I get too sidetracked, I'm going to show you how I have put together this first signature. Also, if you follow me on Facebook in one of our groups, I posted that I was making some shimmer mist paper. What I do is I use just regular 8.5 by 11 copy paper and tea dye it, and then I make my own shimmer mist. And if you want to find out the recipe for that, it is from Hermelinda Aguiar. Oh, what's her last name? Zapora or something like that. Anyhow, brilliant. She does the most beautiful prayer journals, and they are all stunning. And she makes her own shimmer mist. And if you look on her channel and search out homemade shimmer mist, I'm sure you're going to find the video. It's awesome. My little tip for that one is make sure you use a lot of the clear glue, because you're putting glittery sparkly eyeshadow into the alcohol. You want to make sure it's going to adhere to your paper without rubbing off. That's about the only thing. So all of these things are done ahead of time in preparation to start your journal. And once I have tea dyed all the papers, then I cut them to the size that I want to put into the journal. And then I choose how many papers go in each signature and what else I want to include, like book paper or music paper, tracing paper, vellum, those kinds of things. I don't usually use scrapbook paper. It's just too heavy when you want to put it inside your signatures. But you could definitely use it as an outer cover, especially if you're making an open spine journal, because you need that support. So here I've just started with a slightly smaller page on the cover, and then got this so it just shows top and bottom. I really like that effect. And then I've got a short page. And what I've done is I've left a bit of the border on here, so I can choose to make this a flap, or if I decide as I'm doing the pages, I can just cut that off. Here's my shimmer mist paper in pink. And some music paper, vintage music paper. Didn't have to tea dye this or anything, of course. Sometimes it's a little brittle, so you need to be careful, especially when you're creasing it. This is tea dye tracing paper. And again, you can see the various different sizes of the papers that I've used. And then I've left a fold line on the top or the bottom or the side. And then I just stagger them and just go with what I like. And in the middle, I do usually like to have a bigger sheet, not a small one, because I think it looks more aesthetically pleasing and it's more supportive to have a larger one on the inside. And if you're going to go with the really staggered effect, I would do very small on the front to the largest in the middle. It just works better that way. Some people like all the edges even, so they will trim some of these inside pages so that they're more straight. Because I'm putting lace on them, that's fine with me. Nobody's going to see it, and I'm totally fine with that. So that will be the first signature, and then here is the second one. And I do quite often look at when they're going to be open in the journal, just to make sure that these two coordinate nicely with each other, so that you don't decide afterwards, ooh, I wasn't really looking at that. Sometimes that can happen. Here's some beautiful digital images. I think I used about 3 different kits, usually 3 or 4, and I print them all out, some pages more than once. Here's the music paper. I've left a tuck spot, and yep, just different variety of pages, so completely unadorned. and throw in some other colors too. No, I don't always just stick with pink if it's predominantly pink. And then the other journal will be very much identically the same. Some of the papers are different because I did divide whatever I had printed out. And then the next thing I'm going to talk about is all of the ephemera and the different pieces. So I have already, when I was cutting these out, I determined that I wanted these tiny tags. I love the size. I think they're just cool. They're like a shorter bookmark and will look so pretty in a pocket or a belly band. And I backed them on to parchment paper and then just glued them. Before I cut them out, I did the whole sheet so that it's just one glue process, which worked out really nicely. I think there's about 12 there. And I did that also with all of these tags. And then afterwards I thought, I should have done it on pink parchment, but that's okay. There's going to be a lot of pink in this journal. So these are what I would call maybe small to medium tags and cards, and just backed onto parchment paper. I probably won't adorn them very much other than stitching, and I've decided to use pink stitching, not black. And then of course I'll ink them. I think these all I will ink with, I've been using walnut stain instead of vintage photo. Just got tired of the look. And the walnut stain is a little darker, so I think it'll tie in nicely should I decide to go with black. And then what I've got here is I've cut up the 12 by 12 page out of this Stamperia Passion scrapbook paper into journaling cards. And I will still trim them down a little bit more, but this way I've got various sizes of journaling cards that I want to use. And I could even end up using one of these on the covers if I choose to. But speaking of the cover, and this was my inspiration piece, I bought this in a mounted picture frame with glass and everything. It is printed on fabric. So this is stunning. I fell in love with that, and I've had it sitting on my desk for 2 or 3 months just thinking I want to do a ballet journal. So that's where I got my inspiration from. Then I've cut, of course, you cut out all the accessories pieces from your digital kit, your journal kit, if that's what you choose to do, is purchase that. I prefer it because then I have a real continuous repeat in the theme. And it helps me determine the colors that I really want to stick to. There is some green in here too, which I just love. So these are booklets and some more envelopes. And then speaking of the envelopes, I printed out several of each. So I think I have 3 for each journal out of this kit. This kit is by Artie Mays, and it's been around for a few years, but I absolutely love the colors. So what I might do this time in this journal is, rather than leave it as an envelope, which could either go in a tuck spot or a pocket, I'm going to try to probably straddle the page with it, but attach it so that it becomes a pocket as well as an extra journaling spot. So for example, what I would do is glue it right there, maybe around like this, and then that way you could put a tag behind it. Let me find one here. You could put a tag behind this, and then you could still write on this. It would stay in place, and then you would just straddle the page with the flap of the envelope. Just been thinking about doing that. And then you would have a different color piece of ephemera, of course, to go in here. So that's kind of what I'm thinking of doing. I've never done that before, and I do love to try new things with each project. So yeah, all of these are cut out now, which takes a long time. But all of that helps you in your preparation to building your journal. It makes the rest of it go much quicker for me. In the beginning days, I would sit there and ink everything that I had cut out, and I don't like fussy cutting because it's very hard on the joints in my thumbs. I'm not as young as I used to be, and I'm starting to feel it in my hands, sadly. You know, years ago when I started scrapbooking, you couldn't buy die cuts. The only way you could make a die cut is to go to a scrapbook store, if you could find one that had a die cut machine. This was more than 25 years ago. And you would have to buy their paper, and it was usually 8.5 by 11. I mean, 12 by 12 paper didn't come out on the burst of the scrapbooking phenomenon. It was a while before it came out, so we had 8.5 by 11 paper and just solid colors and very few prints, and it was pretty boring, but it was basic and it was okay. So we would go to the scrapbook store, punch out all of our die cuts, and then we'd have to use that in our memory albums. So we were very limited. I mean, what we have today available at our fingertips is phenomenal. It's just unbelievable. You can buy your own die cutting machine and have it at home with you. And you can, I mean, I've got a little sidekick, this Sizzix, that I use for real tiny pieces. I mean, who would have ever thought? You know, those other big machines were just crazy to use. But anyhow, that's the history of what I've seen become available that has made it so much easier for us to produce amazing projects. What I also have ready here is some pockets, paper pockets cut from the kit. And these I can use either as a side tuck on each page, you know, obviously for a slightly shorter page, or as a pocket, or on tags. I mean, it's endless what you can do with all of your cutouts. Beautiful dress forms. I'm probably going to use them as side tucks. So that's why I've got them together with the rest of those pieces. And then this is what will become a lot of my tags. So I've printed all these images out just on regular 24-pound copy paper, and of course T-dyed them, cut them out. And I'm going to make various size tags with them. Those are my plans. And what I'm going to do probably this time, rather than cut them out of book page or music sheet, I might do some with music sheet. I've got these bigger tags in mind. And what I do is I have a whole, it's another thing I'll show you. I have a whole slew of templates that I've just, when I buy a digital kit, I'll just make a template of something that I like that works for me. And then I will put the name of the designer on there so that I know who it came from and who to give credit to if I need to, because that was their creation, and I respect that. But what I want to do with these, I'm thinking, is cover with lace. So I would take the tag, take some scrapbook paper, cover it with lace, and then start collaging up the images on the tags and add ribbons and embellishments and fancy appliques and such. So that is my plan with these. So that would be a separate video when we get to starting the tags and such. So what else have I maybe not covered? Inking, what I chose to do was, I'm looking for my stencil, here it is. I don't have, like I said, I didn't have any ballet stamps, so I got this. It's the complementing piece in the Stamperia line, and it's a big stencil, but I'm planning on just using like parts of it on pages. You know, it's got some music, it's got the word passion, it's got script, and these beautiful images. I know it's going to come in really handy. And I'll probably go with some roses too. I have a really lovely couple of rose stencils. So I'm always thinking of all of those elements before I even start a journal. That's all in my head. and it might look like a lot to you, and it might sound like overdoing it, but that's the way I roll. And I mean, everything that I bought, I've reused and reused, so it's always a good investment. And that's just the way it works for me. So I hope these thoughts have been helpful. And what I'm going to do next, in what I would call maybe the second video, is choosing the placement of where to put each pocket and cut the lace pieces and so on. So there will be a gap in time between now and then, but I will show you what I do is I just paper clip them all in their place, and then I can still move them around if I want to before I just put them down with a little bit of glue, a little bit of the Fabri-Tac glue usually, and then I sew them in place. And I prefer sewing because it just makes it look so textured, and it also helps to hold them in place. And you don't have to worry about the image. I was always cautious about sewing, even like right over top of an image. It doesn't distract from it. I have never regretted sewing in my journals. And that's my method. I also think ahead as well about the covers. I did mention this beautiful piece that I've got in mind, and I'm probably going to go with a pink velvet or a pink silk, or one of each, because I think that would be beautiful for this particular journal collection. So I hope there are things that you've been able to glean from here, and that you will be inspired and maybe start collecting some things, and then come and join me for the next video. I hope you have a great day.